47 miles of subterranean passageways run beneath the Colorado plains, and not one of them appears on the blueprints that were submitted for public review. 47 miles. If you laid that distance end to end above ground, you would cover the entire length of Denver's urban core and push out into the suburb on both sides. You would pass through neighborhoods, shopping districts, industrial zones, and open rangeland. It is a distance you can drive in under an hour on the interstate, which means you could theoretically trace its length on the surface while the structure beneath your wheels remains invisible, unacknowledged, and, according to official documentation, non-existent. Somewhere beneath the runways of Denver International Airport, beneath the 53 square miles of high-altitude prairie the airport occupies, making it physically larger than the island of Manhattan, there are tunnels and chambers that no licensed architect ever signed. No engineering firm of record stamped the drawings. No permit was pulled. And yet workers who were employed during construction between 1989 and 1995 described going underground, riding in vehicles through passages that stretched far beyond the designated automated baggage tunnels, described walking into spaces they were told not to discuss, in a project already so over budget and so delayed that the whole of Denver was asking questions nobody in authority seemed willing to answer. What is down there? That is the question this video is going to chase. Not with speculation alone, with measurements, with documents, with the words of people who were present, and with the strange, persistent pattern of silence that follows every time someone gets close enough to find out. The existence of an underground automated baggage system at Denver International Airport is not disputed. It was publicly announced, publicly funded in part, and publicly catastrophic in its failure. The system was designed by BAE Automated Systems and was supposed to move luggage at 20 miles per hour through 26 miles of tunnels, using a network of more than 4,000 telecarts. It was one of the most ambitious airport infrastructure projects ever attempted in the United States, and it failed so completely that United Airlines eventually dismantled its portion entirely in 2005 at a cost of roughly $1 million per day. So the tunnels, at least some of them, are real. The airport itself admits this. But here is the gap that every serious investigator eventually falls into. The documented baggage tunnel system accounts for 26 miles. Independent researchers, ground-penetrating radar surveys, and structural engineers suggest a network considerably larger than that. When you map the known tunnels against the reported access points, against the ventilation structures appearing at locations where no baggage system should run, something doesn't add up. The geometry is wrong for what we've been told. In 1994, a construction worker who asked to be identified only as a former Denver contractor gave a recorded account to a regional journalist named Phil Goodstein. The worker described being part of a team that excavated sections of tunnel not connected to the baggage system, running at depths inconsistent with the mechanical systems on the official blueprints. And that terminated in what he described as finished spaces, rooms with smooth walls, ventilation, and electrical conduit that had already been sealed before the general construction crews were given access. The article Goodstein was drafting that included this account was never published in the form he intended. When asked about it in a later interview, he described the decision to exclude certain material as one made under pressure he did not want to characterize further. In 2007, a team of researchers affiliated with a Colorado-based engineering consultancy conducted what they described as an informal but systematic ground-penetrating radar survey of sections of the airport perimeter. What they reported finding were anomalous returns. Readings consistent with large, hollow, reinforced spaces at locations where published infrastructure maps showed nothing below the surface drainage system. The report described a specific return pattern near the airport's northern perimeter, consistent with a passageway roughly 30 feet wide and running at a depth of approximately 60 feet. Within 2 years, the consultancy had been dissolved, and the lead researcher had moved to a position in the private sector where, according to colleagues, he declined all further contact on the subject. The pattern around Denver International Airport is not a single incident. It is a catalog of incidents, each one individually dismissible, collectively forming something much harder to wave away. Denver International Airport was originally projected to open in October 1993. It did not open until February 1995, 16 months late. Buried inside the cost overruns, which ballooned from an original estimate of $1.7 billion to a final figure exceeding $4.8 billion, are line items that investigators described as difficult to reconcile with the known scope of work. Specifically, the excavation costs. The volume of earth moved during construction was extraordinary. Official figures describe the movement of 110 million cubic yards of earth during site preparation. The airport was built on relatively flat prairie. The terrain did not require that scale of excavation for the surface structures that exist. Runways do not require 110 million cubic yards of earth movement. Engineers who have examined the figures publicly have noted that the numbers suggest a scope of underground work that exceeds what the official record describes. The volume of earth moved at Denver International Airport is consistent with the construction of a substantial underground facility, not with an airport. Documented reports from the construction period describe as many as 5 different general contractors being brought in, completing sections of work, and then being told their work was incorrect and needed to be demolished and rebuilt. Workers described being confused by this process. Sections of completed tunnel were reportedly buried and built over, preventing any single contractor from having a complete picture of the total layout. This deliberate compartmentalization of knowledge among contractors is not structurally implausible. It is, in fact, a well-documented technique in classified government construction projects. The construction of the Cheyenne Mountain Complex, which sits roughly 80 miles south of Denver, used similar compartmentalization methods to prevent any one firm from understanding the full scope of the facility. That geographic proximity to Cheyenne Mountain is something that serious researchers keep returning to. Look at the airport's most visually arresting public feature, and you find another layer of the mystery. The murals by artist Leo Tanguma that line the main terminal. One mural depicts a green gas-masked military figure with a sword standing over the bodies of dead women and children, stabbing a dove. Another shows children of the world offering weapons to a central figure. A third shows the earth on fire, forest burning, species dying. The airport's official position is that these murals represent the triumph of peace over war and environmental destruction. Tanguma himself has given interviews affirming this interpretation. But the imagery, taken in full, maps with unusual precision onto narratives involving global catastrophe, the death of the old world, and the emergence of a new order from the ashes. One researcher, a cultural semiotician, described the mural's symbolic vocabulary as drawing explicitly from traditions associated with initiation, the death of the old self, and the emergence of the initiated into a new dispensation. His analysis was submitted to 2 mainstream academic journals. Neither responded. His university later confirmed he had been asked to withdraw the paper from the institutional repository. A large blue marker stone embedded in the terminal floor, bearing a prominent Freemasonic square and compass symbol, was installed with an official dedication ceremony that included Freemasons in full regalia. The capstone contains a time capsule. It explicitly references the New World Airport Commission as one of the sponsoring organizations. Researchers who subsequently investigated the New World Airport Commission found no corporate registration, no public filings, no membership records, and no evidence that this organization existed in any form outside of the airport capstone dedication. For an organization whose name is literally inscribed in stone in one of the busiest airports in the United States, the complete absence of a paper trail is, at minimum, unusual. Denver International Airport sits at an elevation of 5,431 feet above sea level. It was built on land that was, prior to construction, relatively unremarkable high-altitude prairie. There are no natural cave systems in that specific geology. There are no historic mining operations beneath the airport's footprint. Whatever is underground was put there intentionally, during the construction period, by people paid to put it there. In 2018, a FOIA request filed by a journalist at a Colorado news outlet sought in internal communications from the Denver Airport Authority regarding subsurface infrastructure. What was returned was a set of documents from which substantial portions had been redacted. The redacted portions concerned what the document index described as deep subsurface utility and facility coordination records. The journalist submitted an administrative appeal. The appeal was denied without explanation of which specific statutory exemption applied. A subsequent request under Colorado's open records laws produced a letter stating that the records in question fell outside the scope of Colorado open records law because of federal preemption. A utility management record for a civilian airport withheld on national security grounds. The decision to build the airport far to the northeast of Denver's existing urban core, far from Stapleton Airport, in a location that required substantial new road infrastructure, was never fully justified by any transportation efficiency analysis made public. But optimal for a different purpose, the location makes more geographic sense. Positioned on the high plains, away from population centers, above stable sedimentary geology that presents no unusual complications for deep excavation. It is positioned in a manner consistent with facility siting criteria used by agencies planning for continuity of government and continuity of operations scenarios. Continuity of government infrastructure in the United States is not a conspiracy theory. It is a documented reality. A network of hardened underground facilities designed to allow the continuation of essential government functions following a catastrophic event. These facilities share certain siting characteristics. They are placed away from primary target zones. Their construction is compartmentalized, with different contractors handling different sections. Denver International Airport's construction matches each of these characteristics. The Mount Weather Emergency Operations Center in Virginia operated for decades as a classified facility before its existence became publicly known. The Greenbrier Resort in West Virginia contained a classified congressional bunker for approximately 30 years before a Washington Post reporter revealed it in 1992. These were not conspiracy theories. They were real facilities, built under real secrecy, that emerged into public knowledge only because someone eventually talked. The pattern of suppression around Denver International Airport maps with unusual precision onto those precedents. $4.8 billion was the final cost. The original projection was $1.7 billion. That is an overrun of $3.1 billion. The failed baggage system accounts for a portion, but the excavation volumes do not fully account for where all of that money went. An underground facility of the scale suggested by the anomalous measurements at Denver, 47 miles of unmapped tunnels, large finished rooms, dedicated ventilation systems, would represent an expenditure well within the unexplained margin of Denver International Airport's cost overrun. The arithmetic is not proof, but it is the kind of arithmetic that, once you do it, is very hard to unsee. If there is an undisclosed government facility beneath Denver International Airport, hundreds or possibly thousands of workers would have had to participate in its construction without talking. The more people who know a secret, the less likely it remains a secret. But look at how the construction was actually organized. The rotating contractor's strategy was specifically designed to prevent any single person or team from understanding the whole. A worker who excavated a tunnel section 800 feet long in a section of the site he had never seen before and would never see again does not know what his 800 feet connects to. He knows what he dug. He does not know the map. And some people did talk. They talked to Alex Christopher. They talked to Phil Goodstein. They talked to the journalists and researchers willing to collect those accounts. The issue is not that nobody talked. The issue is that talking did not produce a public investigation, a congressional inquiry, or a mainstream press investigation willing to follow the trail. The talking happened. The institutional response to the talking is the suppression pattern. The underground network beneath Denver, if it exists in the form suggested by the evidence, is not an isolated anomaly. It is a node in a system. Cheyenne Mountain to the south, Mount Weather to the east, Raven Rock Mountain in Pennsylvania, the underground facility beneath the White House complex, and at the center of the continent, at high altitude, Denver. It is the rational, systematic, ongoing project of a government preparing for scenarios it does not discuss with the public, using public funds in public spaces, behind a veil of compartmentalized construction and institutional silence. That framing is speculative. The evidence does not prove it, but the evidence does not disprove it. And the official explanation for what is underground at Denver International Airport has measurable holes that no spokesperson has ever filled, which brings us back to that number. 47 miles, the 110 million cubic yards of excavated earth that don't match the surface structures above them. The cost overrun of $3.1 billion that doesn't disappear into any documented scope of work. The rotating contractor strategy that prevented any one person from seeing the whole map. The FOIA records withheld on national security grounds from a civilian airport. The engineering survey findings that circulated privately before the researcher vanished into silence. The capstone with the name of an organization that doesn't exist. The murals of apocalypse hanging above the departures board. 47 miles. Running beneath the largest footprint of any airport in the United States, in the center of the continent, at the highest elevation, on the flattest ground. No architect signed off on those tunnels. No permit was pulled. No contractor of record has ever acknowledged excavating them. And yet the people who were there, the workers who went underground, who drove through passages, who described rooms with smooth walls and sealed access points, those people exist. Their accounts exist. Their silence after speaking exists. What is down there has not been revealed. But the shape of the concealment has been visible for 30 years to anyone willing to look at it carefully. And the shape is deliberate. The question is not whether something extraordinary lies beneath the Colorado Plains at the coordinates of Denver International Airport. The question is when the next person who knows exactly what it is will decide that silence is no longer the price they're willing to pay.